when I got told about the concept and characters, I was very intrigued about having a short film that's a South African short film about stalking and isolation. And I wanted to see how this concept and narrative would relate or just make it an audience feel. So that's why I produced this film. I think the main thing when dealing with problematic crew members or cast members is communication and just being able to talk to them and understand why they feel the way they feel about a situation and just trying to communicate with them to calm them down and solve the problem.
The inspiration that I had for the film basically came about during the whole lockdown situation that happened in South Africa and around the world. A lot of people were pushed into isolation, and I just thought that using this isolation to kind of talk about topics such as relationship dynamics and obsessions that people can have, as well as just like the understanding of male psychology, especially in like today's world where it's such a technological era that it's very easy to obtain people's information off social media and stuff like that. So I thought that bringing all these different elements together would create a good overall theme for what the film is talking about. So some of the problems that I encountered on set, obviously you have to look at them as problems that can be solved and not problems that are you're just going to be stuck with. So I guess any problem that comes up on set or in pre-production or in post-production, it's just a matter of finding whatever solutions there are and getting them done. A film that has inspired me the most is most probably Fight Club, and that's just because it's a film that I could watch 100,000 times and still find new and different perspectives on things from it. And just cinematically, I think that movie kind of got me into wanting to make movies.
When I was preparing for the role of Eric, I literally gave birth to the character in the sense of creating Eric from birth, moving into his teenage life and the decisions he makes. Created his world, basically the relationship he had with his mother, he had with his friends and so forth. That kind of influenced and motivated some of the decisions he makes in the film. What I took away from Eric was him not noticing his weaknesses. They were the downfall of his whole journey per se, because he doesn't see what he's doing as something that's wrong. Therefore, he cannot stop himself nor change his actions. It's just in this vicious cycle of his life.
So in terms of the overall grade and lighting of the film, especially for the protagonist of Eric, we had an overall blue tone for the start of the film where we lit and graded Eric with the dark, cold blue tones in order to show his depression and isolation and how cut off from the world he is. And then as the film progressed and when he discovered the actress Tori Turner and started to become obsessed with her and started to take an interest and fall in love with her, we started to introduce green tones in order to show this obsession and kind of this evil side that was coming onto Eric. And in between the film, like from the discovery of Tori and the discovery of Eleanor Jackson at the end, where the cycle repeats itself and he goes back into this obsession with another woman, we introduce warmer colors like orange, red and yellow in order to bring this like romantic genre into the film and try to romanticize him falling in love with these characters, even though it is not a positive thing. From the start of the film, we shot much wider and used strong lines of perspective, and in order to like show him being like pinned in to his like environment, and which like kind of emphasized him being isolated and alone and not having anything around him. And then as the film progressed, we started shooting like tighter, which kind of conveyed that he was kind of like getting inside his head and becoming more obsessed and like trying to forget things around him, and was only like focusing on his obsession, which would be Tori and Eleanor at the end of the film. And as well, we started introducing movement. So like at the start of the film, everything was quite static, but movement would be introduced into the film when we had like this character change of him finally discovering Tori from slow pushes into the TV where he discovered her, and tracks out where he first made his move when you went and visited Tori for this fake interview?
So basically with the edit pattern, what I tried to convey was Eric's state of mind and his flow of emotions. So in the beginning, he's super isolated and he's really depressed because his mom just died. So it's very slow. And when he discovers Tori, he gains a sense of inspiration, and then the edit pacing picks up. So I kind of try to use the emotion as a guideline on how to pace. No, not at all. I actually wanted to be a director and a writer, but sadly that wasn't in the cards for me, and I discovered I was good at editing, so I became an editor.
So the sound design aims to bring the story to life in a sense that it fills up the atmospheric space of the film, and it does this in several ways, but I'll mention the two most important ways. The first point is that it basically immerses the audience into the film with the use of the ambience and the score, in a sense that it creates emotions that the audience is meant to feel. And in the film there's a build-up of emotions throughout, such as desire, sadness, anger, tension, etc. The second point is that it allows the audience to be immersed into Eric's mind as he types out his thoughts and feelings onto the typewriter. So now that allows the audience to feel the emotions that I just mentioned without there being any sort of confusion. My favorite part of the film that we filmed was the B&B scene, because that was the first time Eric met Tori Turner, and in a way that he didn't know what to expect, and the audience sort of didn't know what to expect either.
Well, that wasn't initially part of the plan. I actually wanted to study in script writing, but as I progressed through my degree, I naturally gravitated towards visual effects, and I found myself liking a lot of aspects of it. Well, the process is pretty similar to a lot of other films. You look at the footage and what is done, and then you take what you proposed and you try and implement it. A lot of times though, or sometimes, stuff doesn't usually translate very well, and it requires some tinkering and trial and error. But once you actually get the desired result, it's quite a satisfactory feeling. And I feel like with VFX, nothing is ever impossible. There's always a solution to something, and some are a bit more complex or more complicated than others, but there's always a way to achieve what you want.
My role as a production designer is basically to take the script, design and plan each environment that the characters are going to be in, and the props that are meant for each character. I then have to find locations, buy set dressing, or make it myself, and execute all of these plans and designs into the film, a world of story as its reality. The color palette for this film is made up of 5 colors, namely green, blue, yellow, orange, and red. This spectrum of colors is basically meant to show Eric's overall progression of toxicity throughout the film. So in reality, when we come across a bottle of toxic chemicals or poison, there's usually a color allocated to its bottle. So this shows the level of toxicity. So blue would be like the least toxic, and red would be the most toxic. Green, yellow, and orange are kind of in between. So the whole film shows the progression from blue all the way up to red.
So usually what we'll do is we'll look at who is our character. So for example, what is their economic status, what is their culture, who are they, what are they trying to say about themselves. So for example, if you've watched our previous film with The Mirror, our character was a very wealthy young girl who was very self-conscious and very proud of her image, so we portrayed that through her clothing, whereas our character in this film is a lot less self-conscious. He actually doesn't really care about what he looks like, and that's kind of portrayed through the clothing. So yeah, basically just economic status, culture, what they're trying to say about themselves, and also like with the genre, what we're trying to convey about the character and the themes. With this film, it was quite difficult for me because normally I've had a lot of films where I've been able to tell the story through makeup as well, whereas this one was pretty much just styling. So there was a lot more emphasis placed on how the audience can decode our messages through the use of color, the textures, and the lack of change in styling really, and how that portrayed our characters. So that was quite different for me. It was, I couldn't rely on makeup anymore, and also having a male lead. This is the first time I've ever worked on a male lead, so that was very, very different.